Renewable fuels can be a hot topic with farmers and ranchers, and many have strong opinions about the subject. Our next guests are here to tell us about the interesting and maybe even complementary relationships between biodiesel and beef production. We're joined by Rob Schaefer, an Illinois soybean grower and Angus cattle producer, and Alan Weber. He's an ag economist and senior advisor to the National Biodiesel Board. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Rob, you and I talked on the phone several months ago, and you said, Kevin, I'd love to come on the show and talk about this. Why was that such a passion of yours?
It started, besides Illinois, we also own a farm in southwestern Kansas, and I could see a big feedlot from my farm who buys our grain, and I just was meeting with the grain buyer, building that relationship, and I was wearing a biodiesel t-shirt, and he started asking me some questions about biodiesel, and the more we talked about it, the more I could figure out there was a disconnect between the biodiesel industry and possibly the cattle industry, and wanted to explore that, being a soybean producer and a cattle producer, wanting to go ahead and talk to the cattle folks to go ahead and explain the benefits of biodiesel to the whole industry.
So let's talk about that. What are some of the benefits that we as beef producers receive or can receive from biodiesel?
Yeah, and everybody today is trying to they're trying to increase their profits and lower their risk and also lower their costs. And one way to do that is through biodiesel, as far as on the animal fat side and carcass values, and we'll get into that here in a little bit.
Yeah, so let's talk first of all revenue, right? Mm-hmm. You said we're all looking at ways to add a few more pennies to the top line. How can biodiesel do that?
Well, in biodiesel, when people think biodiesel, they usually think of soybean oil as a feedstock.
Yep.
Well, as I got more involved from the soybean industry into the biodiesel industry, biodiesel is made out of several different kinds of feedstocks, okay? Being animal fat. They can take the animal fats and make that, and 13% of biodiesel in the United States is made from animal tallow, which helps, increase the carcass values, which that's a big thing, and trying to hit that home with increasing carcass values and that kind of thing.
Alan, tell us a little bit more about the revenue benefits we can receive as beef producers through biodiesel.
Yeah, so Rob makes a great point in that animal fats, and thus the livestock producers, are really important to the biodiesel industry. Last year, for example, about 1.8 billion pounds of animal fats were used. Now that's all inclusive, so that's poultry fat, that's choice white grease as well, but so really important. The question we do get asked sometimes, though, is those benefits, who gets them? Does it stay on one side of the supply chain, like with the packer, or does it go all the way back to the cow-calf producer? So we looked at that economically, and what we found was, indeed, those price impacts are distributed throughout the supply chain. So, for example, in my home state of Missouri, a commercial cow-calf operator like my father, we estimate that every time that he would take a heifer or steer to the sale barn, it's probably like a $20 bill in his back pocket.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes we think about ribeyes and hamburger and don't think about some of the value of everything else that comes with that beef carcass. So we talked a little bit about the revenue side. What about the cost side? I mean, I think what many producers wonder is, does biodiesel drive feed costs higher?
Most people, soybean meal or soybean crush is driven by protein, but also you get the meal, you get the oil, and you get the hulls, and most of that, but it's driven by the protein cost now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And since protein drives, every time we crush a bushel of soybeans, we also get that oil that Rob referred to. And that co-product nature, that's what allows the benefits to go to livestock producers. And so the next question is how much, right, in terms of benefit. We worked with an economics group outside of Champaign, Illinois, by the name of Syncec Consulting. And we asked the question, what would happen if the biodiesel industry domestically was half the size that it is today? And the conclusion is that soybean meal would be at least $20 a ton more expensive, or conversely, by growing the biodiesel industry, we've actually made feed costs less for livestock producers. And stepping back and looking at that from a national perspective, the beef industry in the U.S. probably paid at least $40 million less last year because of biodiesel.
Wow, that's surprising. I wouldn't have anticipated myself. So I'm following you on the economics in terms of improving revenue and managing costs, but you also mentioned mitigating risk. Alan, tell us how biodiesel actually helps mitigate risk.
And it's a great question, and I think whenever Rob and I are out talking with livestock producers, the feed cost issue makes sense to them. A lot of them probably haven't thought about necessarily how much animal fats are being used. But once we explain it, the light bulb kind of goes off. But almost nobody has thought of the fact that every time we make a gallon of biodiesel, we have a co-product called glycerin. And if the biodiesel producer further refines that glycerin into technical or pharmaceutical grade glycerin, there are actually literally hundreds of uses. If you go home tonight, look in your bathroom at soaps or shampoos, you might find glycerin as an ingredient.
Wow.
But if we don't refine that, you can use it as an energy source in feed rations.
I did not know that.
So it's listed with AFCO in the official publication.
Huh.
So legal feed ingredient to be used. And it's one way, if energy prices get higher, energy being like corn prices get higher, it provides, you know, another possibility to be used.
Rob, one last question for you. What would you like to share with your fellow cattlemen?
Just the fact that biodiesel helps their bottom line. It creates United States jobs. It helps, you know, taxes. It's a win-win for both the cattle industry, the soybean guy. It's a win-win for the United States, actually, and also especially to cattlemen across the country.
That's fantastic. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Very educational for me, and I'm sure all of our viewers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The National Biodiesel Board maintains the largest library of biodiesel information in the U.S. You can find answers to many of your questions about biodiesel at their official website, and that's biodiesel.org.